Hey YouTube, Kiratwig here, bringing you guys a look at my Dungeon Dice Monsters Yu-Gi-Oh collection. It's actually been quite some time since last I did a Dungeon Dice Monster video. I think it's actually been more than 5 years since I did one related to Dungeon Dice Monsters on my channel. But for those of you that don't know, Dungeon Dice Monsters was a game they introduced around the time when the special came out in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, where Duke Devlin, had his Dungeon Dice Monsters card game. They tried to make the game last. It just wasn't as popular as the actual Yu-Gi-Oh card game. Maybe just the difficulty, for the game mat, all the different figures you had to carry around. But all in all, it was still a pretty fun game, and glad I really invested at the time when the game was out in so many of the different figures, and still keeping the actual board game and all the pieces needed for the game, intact. So I thought I'd give you guys a little look at, the entire collection of my Dungeon Dice Monsters cards and figures and all the other pieces for the game. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So for the starter part of the game, the most important part are the dice that you see here. You were given a good amount of each colored dice that you would use to summon out your monsters. As you can see here, you have the 4 different colors, and with them you have the chance to summon out different level monsters, which you have 1 through 4 in the game, with 1 being the weakest and 4 being the strongest. And you saw different stars, if you guys can see, on all the different sides of the dice, and you had to roll and get those summon crests so you could summon out the monsters, and the numbers on each dice went down each and every time you wanted to summon one. I think there were only like one number 4 on each of the green dice, with 4 ones on the reds, and then just they went down from there, meaning more difficult to summon those monsters. And obviously you had to be reliant on the die roll to get out your summon. But it was kind of different from the anime. I think the anime had just different colored dice to begin with. The whole color took up the dice as well. They definitely look cooler in the anime, but they also probably were much more expensive and not as useful for dice rolls, since these dice have the curved edges and whatnot. But they gave you a good amount of dice, and you needed to buy the starter kit to obviously play with them. And I don't think if you had that, you couldn't, obviously play the game either, since that's where the dice came out of. And with all of the starting kits as well, you were given these game pieces, which had different layouts that you could play on the field. I believe they had 5 different ones, all the ones I see here, and they were different colored as well for you to play on the field. So one of you would be red and one would be blue, and then you would just try and connect up on the game mat, which we have right here as well. Which I think my biggest regret is, if you can see the full ass of the mat on the camera, you can actually see a good amount of pieces were had to be placed on, and then just gone all the way across the board, which you could play a mini game with the lined zones, or you could play a full game if you had more pieces, which usually took a little longer as well. So you were given each one of these. I think it would have been great if they had, or you probably still can create, because it's about the same size of an actual playmat, just a rubber playmat, so you can just roll it out and not have to worry about the paper mat. Which, if I just want to keep this safe and play more with it, I might actually invest in having a rubber mat made. But you were given all these different pieces, which are very vital for obviously playing as well. And you were also, for the last parts of the actual game pieces you play, you were given these 2 abacuses, which you would use to keep track of your crest markers, which were given to you when you also roll the dice, and you would get any of the other symbols besides the summon one, and you would keep track of them on the crest. I think if you got any more crests and you kind of exceeded the crest pool, you would just have to keep track otherwise, with a piece of paper or something like that. So one of the flaws, obviously I think it's better since they didn't give us calculators, since I think those would have been dead by now, depending on the type of battery they use. But they tried their best to give us all the material you needed to keep the game going. But the coolest part of the game, and probably one of the most collectible features of it, were the little minifigures that you were given along with the trading cards. These came in the starter decks for Dungeon Dice Monsters, and you also were given a couple of them out of booster packs as well. With each booster pack, you were given 1 figure and 1 card, and the booster packs were actually these boxes that you opened up, and you tried to basically pull whichever one from that series. I think we had 4 series in total with the Dungeon Dice Monster cards you can get, and a whole lot of monsters for sure. I don't have that many of them compared to, I think, all that were out. I'm still missing some actual ones that I would really like to get one of these days. It just seems very hard for people to either want to trade away their Dungeon Dice monsters or, you know, just have them available to trade, since it did come out, you know, during the first generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! But still, I thought I'm going to go through each one just so you can see all the different minifigures I have. This is the main part of the video to show off. The first one you see here is Orgoth the Relentless. For those of you that don't know, Orgoth was recently released in the new Battles of Legend Relentless Revenge as Duke Devlin's ace card, but this is actually where he first originated as his main monster to use in Dungeon Dice Monsters, which, as you can see, you were given a card and minifigure here, which they did their best with the detail for sure on these, and you also had the names on the bottom to identify just where, you know, the if it was the right figure you were using with the card as well. I guess they also wanted you to, like, maybe put your name on the bottom of them as well, so you could, if there were like 2 Orgoth the Relentless on the field, you could identify which one was yours and which one was your opponent's. And more memorable monster you see here is the Wing Dragon, Guardian of the Fortress. I have a couple of Yugi's monsters. I don't have Dark Magician. I would have loved to have, you know, pulled that one, but it didn't come with the starter deck. I'll show the ones right after Wing Dragon, Guardian of the Fortress that you got with the starter deck. This one came out of a booster pack, and each booster pack was actually, if I remember correctly, $4 for one pack, so that's $4 for one figure and one card. The ones we got in the star deck were the Knight of Twin Swords, which you see his figure here, and we also got Gearfried, the Iron Knight, with his figure. One of the exclusive Dungeon Dice Monsters figures was Thunderball, also used by Yugi. They gave us a good amount of them. I think the exclusive ones like Knight of Twin Sword and Thunderball were given to us. Also, Buster Blader. Yugi didn't use this one in the actual episode, but he did run it. Same with the Strike Ninja, which I don't remember if Strike Ninja came out as a card afterwards when it came out in Dungeon Dice Monsters, but it was a card, you know, available as an actual TCG card as well. And also for the starter, we were also given the Vorse Raider. So you were given 6 monsters with the entire starter set, so that's 6 total, which you could play a very, very small game, like if you and your opponent each got 3 monsters from that. They didn't give you any level 4s, which, as you can see, all these are like level 1, 3, 3, 2, 2, and 3, so pretty well divided, just none of the big monsters to use those dice for. But you can also honestly tell that these cards match up pretty well with their cards, and all the cards had different abilities and effects as well that you would use on the board for using the different types of crests, and have different attack and defense, which I think another big part of the game that was difficult to play was the fact that you had to keep track of the HP the monster had when it was attacked, so you'd have to somehow keep track on the actual card itself that you kept outside of the board also. But these were the 6 that were given to us. I think Thunderball is probably the most well built of all the figures, probably just because he's one of the most simplistic as well. But you were given those 6 along with their cards for the starter deck when you purchased it, and you were also given your life points, or heart points as they called it in the game. So the Monster Lord was given to you to use to keep track of your life on the field, as it says there on the card. The Monster Lord is you. And for the other booster pack ones, I think I already showed you guys the Winged Dragon, Guardian of the Fortress, but I also have one of Pegasus's cards, the Illusionist Faceless Mage. I don't know if this is one of the only cards we have of Pegasus. I believe we got relinquished. I don't know if it came out in the English or not, but I do think he does have that card. We also have another one of Duke Devlin's cards here. Definitely one of the most busted ones whenever I play with my friends. We always try to see who can get the Blast Lizard first, just because it has a pretty powerful destruction effect. Weak stats otherwise, but really do love how they made the minifigure for this one as well. Perfectly matched up with, you know, the card art for sure. One of the more well-known vanilla monsters, I believe it was in the original TCG, is the 13th Grave with an actual effect in this game. So didn't nail the colors, but other than that, pose for the card was pretty spot on. And we also have another one of Yugi's signature cards is the Giant Soldier Stone. The color scheme, I do like the contrast they did with the actual figure. And then it's basically the same pose, so they did pretty well with that as well. If you can get a little zoomed right there, you can see matches up very nicely with the cards. I like how they did the 3D art on the cards as well, just to show off them a little more. But Yugi, another one of his big monsters, I think it might have been the first one he summoned in the anime because he had so many high crests in his deck. So the level 4 Mighty Mage, which I don't think we ever got this card in the TCG. It might have been remade into Arcanite Magician, and that's my belief, maybe, or the Silent Magician. But this is what he had in Dungeon Dice. Very, very nice card. Was happy I pulled it actually because I think it was one of the rare ones from the set I got it in. And I also got one of Bones' cards here, the Dragon Zombie, level 2. Very easy to summon, but they nailed all the patches in the color with this one for sure. It looks more like the actual color from the original card than it does on the 3D card. And I think these two were actually, signature to the Dungeon Dice Monster game. We have Crocosaurus here and Magician Dragon. They were level 3 and 4, respectively, but really do love the figure work for these as well. These are powerhouses. I know when we get them out whenever I play, for sure, but pretty awesome there as well. And a lot of the Arm Ninja. He doesn't have his red color scheme. I think it may have either become faded or just not as, well shown on the actual figure itself compared to the card. But still very, very cool. And we've also got the Shadow Ghoul, which its face doesn't look as creepy as the one on the card, but I still say the figure does look pretty good. I think they would end up reusing, this basic scheme for a figure in some of their later Shadow Ghoul figurines. And we've also got Ansatsu, which I actually messed this card up with Armed Ninja whenever we're playing it. They do look kind of similar, a little different with some of their poses, but still, the body pose for sure, and just how the card looks overall is the same. And we've got one of Kaiba's cards here, Gyaku Tenno Megami, which she doesn't look anything, and I can show for sure that this is her figure right here. Doesn't look anything like the actual card itself. Her hair is not correct. Her staff isn't in the right position. They just were not really going all out when it came to this card and her, figure matchup. They were pretty spot on for most of them. Just that one was a complete miss. But same, I would say, for Neko Girl. I guess it depends how you're looking at the card, but the one thing about her is just her eyes are definite nightmare fuel when you look at that, which it kind of looks like that on the card, but just not as bad as the actual figurine you see here. That's just, the stuff of nightmares for sure, looking right into the figure. And I think it's the closest I've ever gone with a card or a figure on the camera. But still, I like that I had such a diverse amount of figures and cards to play the game with. And the last couple that I have, another one of Yugi's monsters, Silver Fang, pretty good with the figure. And the actual color, I think, looks more like the original than the actual card does. And we also got another one of Duke Devlin's is Yoranzo. Now this is actually one of my favorite figures. It looks great on the card, matches up perfectly with the color scheme for the figure. They ended up making it into a normal monster for the actual card game, but I think this figure is true justice because a lot of people don't know about this card for sure, and it's one I would always go for sure when I played the game. And for the last two figures, one of my rarest ones I know is Exodia the Forbidden One. Now, this is a level 4, and it's very difficult to move around the field, but very, very powerful because you double whatever crests you roll, so it gave you a big boost on that for sure. And they really put a lot of effort into this figure. For a small minifigure that they sure had multiples of, they went all out for this card. His arm is a little different than the card, but still looks great as a figure. And that, kind of golden orange color scheme that they represent with Exodia is perfectly represented in this card. And lastly, for the figures, the Dark Magician Girl, which I'm sure a lot of people who haven't actually played this game have at least seen this figure and this card. Looks a little off on the wand, but still, a very fan favorite for sure of all the different figures that we have for these sets. And that's it for all the figures. There are a couple cards where sadly, over time I've just lost the figures to, and, I regret it because a lot of them are really cool, like the twin-headed dragon card. Now, I remember the figure for this one, and I think I just have to look around more, but hopefully I can find these figures. Or, you have the cards, so maybe if you just want to, use something else on the board, if you want to play with these, you could get away with that. But twin-headed dragon was one, but some of the other bigger ones, like I said, I regret losing the pieces, are Red Eyes Black Dragon. I can't believe of all the figures I had, this would have to be the one that I lost a piece to. It's a level 4, and it's a vanilla, just like the original Red Eyes, but still, can't believe I lost the figure for this one. And the biggest regret is that I lost the figure for the Blackluster Soldier. I had a minifigure from the actual, toys that I would just use the Blackluster Soldier for, but sadly I didn't have the actual figure, and it was lost. I don't know where it is, probably in some other bin somewhere. I just have to look harder. But a 40 attack, very, very powerful in this game that it can pull off. A level 4, just like Red Eyes, so some a little more difficult to, summon out. But these two for sure, biggest regret with this game. I've kept everything intact. I just wasn't able to find where I put these two cards. But that is a look at my entire Dungeon Dice Monsters collection. I hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe later down the road I'll give more of a illustration or demonstration, not illustration, on how to play this game, and maybe actually have some actual games filmed for you guys, just so you can see some of that in action as well. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And if you guys have any of the Dungeon Dice figures and you want to comment down below what your collection looks like, feel free to. And Kiratwig out.